Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to this edition of the PowerCat Podcast, a little weekend fun for you. We had some questions from Wabash Station from the podcast earlier in the week. We only did basketball. Now we're going to do football. It is Fitz and Cole and the other Fitz, the nephew E, as we convene. So this is what's going to happen. This is the free version. It's going up on Sunday. Everyone's going to have a wonderful Sunday because of this. And then VIPs. That's what's going to go on. On Monday, you're going to get a really good question from PowerCat Ryan, dropping as a VIP podcast late Monday morning because we need the content Monday morning.
Yep.
That's a completely open book. Boys, first of all, Cole, I want to get to baseball later in the podcast, but they're playing BYU, right as we record, right?
Correct.
And can we say, according to the score, the last two games are more men than Mormon?
It was 18-4. It was 18-4 on was Friday. They lost Thursday. They won Friday. They were up 6-0, and then ESPN Plus just decided to stop working. So nobody.
It is 9-3 right now. I just looked.
There you go, 9-3.
So hopefully they can pull that out. Folks, you might notice something different here on the screen. We have a sponsor for the summer, my good friend Gabriel over at Helping Hands Remodeling right here in Manhattan. Gabriel has all kinds of experience in this area. He primarily does bath and decks, but if you've got any project, give him a shout or head over to mhkremodeler.com, and on there you can find a link to give him that shout via Gmail, mhkremodeler.com. Gabriel at Helping Hands Remodeling. Good dude, man. Really good dude. Our bathrooms he did years ago with his dad look great. Guys see it often. I don't know. I just hang out in there. The dogs come in, visit. You know what I mean. Let's get going now. Your questions from Wabash Station. Start off with the one and only Wagcat. And believe me, I know him well. I'm glad there's only one. Is Kansas State's football program comparatively more enticing to high school graduates or transfers? What did he go all like soulful and reflective this week? Cole, take a crack at this. I got to ponder this a little bit better.
I'm almost to the point where I want to say transfers, which is kind of wild because they're such a developmental program. And I think it has less to do with the fact that they're not, enticing to high school kids, because I know for a fact that they're very enticing to high school kids. But, typically when you get older, you look for structure. It's less about the glamour. It's more about the wins and the losses and how can you get to the next level. And I think when you look at the meat and potatoes, K-State is really good about telling kids, this is where you are, this is where we see you, and this is where we see you in the future. And I think we're seeing that with guys like Marquise Siegel. I mean, what a perfect example of a transfer that you can show and say, hey, this is a kid who played at North Dakota State. He came in, he trusted us, he worked his butt off, and now he's in the NFL. And they've done that with multiple other guys. And so to me, the answer is transfers, because this staff seems to really have a good approach when it comes to picking the right guys out of the transfer portal.
Thoughts?
No, I agree. I think transfers, when you look at it, I think a lot of high school kids, not that K-State isn't a big brand of football, but I think sometimes maybe they see the lights of like a bigger school like Penn State or one of those bigger schools, and they'll end up there, not get the playing time they want, kind of have a chip on their shoulder, go in the portal. And then K-State's like, hey, we'll give you the chance that you want to have, after they realize going to maybe a bigger program or somewhere like that they're not going to get the time they want to play or develop. Whereas after that year, they realize, I want to go somewhere where I can play and actually develop. I think K-State's a perfect spot for that.
There's a certain defensive end who tried that path, went to Alabama and came home. Mm-hmm. I see why you guys answered. And maybe in this immediate time frame, that is the answer. I do wonder, as we advance with these last couple of recruiting classes, if we don't change our mind on that when we see some of these guys on the field full time doing what they do. I think there's an opportunity here for Kansas State to begin to leverage high school recruiting against their ability to let's say you're going up against, let me pick it. I don't want to say Ohio State. That's cliche. You're going up against a Tennessee. Okay. Very good program. And you got a 4-star defensive end. I think you could probably, if you worked enough on it, convince that kid that you're going to develop here and play really soon, but they're going to have the money that as you developed, they're going to go in the portal and recruit over you. And then they're going to do it again because they can buy the best ones in the country. Now, we want the best ones in the country, but we don't have the money to do that. So come here and get a chance from day one. I'll see how they be interesting. Clint Brown, who's in charge of all this for Chris Kleiman, is a smart dude. I'll see if he kind of leans into that a little bit, because I think there is something to be said as we get more information on the portal, the NIL, and now with revenue sharing, which is going to change the game a little bit more, how kids react to that and what type of objections they offer and what kind of counters Kansas State can offer in the sales pitch to get them to look past maybe a brand name. K-State's, I also think we underestimate K-State's brand name.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I think kids around the country generally respect it. But the reality is the Big 12 is the third conference at this point. Kansas State is not the dominant brand in this conference. And I don't think, barring a 10-year run of greatness, will be the brand. I think there's just some other brands that resonate better nationally. Colorado gets really good and Deion doesn't leave. You bet that's the brand.
Yeah.
BYU gets really good. That's the brand. It's just the way it is. BYU in particular with that national following. But I think Kansas State can etch out a beautiful place right underneath those, the blue bloods and some of the bigger brands, which is a step below, and start picking off recruits out of the high school measurements. But I got to admit, right now, being able to walk in there and say, we don't take that many transfers and we need you to complete our roster. Now, we're going to get to another question here. Let's bring this in. I want to do this one now.
Mm-hmm.
If you could weigh, I mistypo, the rankings to include retention, how would you reorder the Big 12? KSU is 14th, and this is about the transfer rankings. Transfer rankings mean nothing for multiple reasons, folks. And I respect our staff greatly. There is no way any staff can keep up with the transfer portal and properly ranking everyone. That is a full-time endeavor for multiple people to watch film, try to actually assess where they were coming out of high school, where they're at a year, 2, 4 years after entering college ball. How do those stats apply? It's almost an impossible job, but they're trying. And so they get numbers and they apply. But see, Kansas State isn't looking for that star quarterback, at least not right now, or star running back, or any high value in terms of NIL players out of the NIL. They're shopping for good deals, players that fit them. And I think the last 2 offensive linemen they got, ironically, both out of Pennsylvania schools, really moved the needle for me, Cole.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it like this, guys. Like with basketball, typically the teams who have the best transfer portal class are going to be the teams that are thought of preseason as being the best teams. Like even think back to, Arkansas, for example, for basketball at the start of the year, top 25 team, brand new team. But with football, I mean, the first team that comes to my mind is Texas Tech. And I'd make the argument you don't want to have a brand new team for football. That just doesn't seem like something that is an efficient strategy. We talk about basketball being a team game. Well, football is 1,000 times more of a team game. And so if you have a bunch of guys who haven't never played a down together, it just doesn't seem like something that I would personally like as a coach. And so I don't think K-State honestly gives a crap where their rankings are. They are looking to build and add to the foundation. They have everything that they want. Now they're just plugging in the things that they see and say, well, we could get a little better here. We could get a little better here. Well, if this guy gets hurt, then it's going to have to be between these 2 guys. So let's bring him in. And maybe instead of finding a good replacement out of 3 or a good replacement out of 2, we'll find a good replacement out of 3. And I thought it was so fascinating that Chris Kleiman's press conference when he's talking about the offensive line, and he says, "Yeah, we don't necessarily need these transfers to come in because we believe in the young guys, and there's going to be competition." They're not promising anything to these transfers, and I think that the fact that they aren't and their ranking is 14th should just tell you that they feel very good about their roster.
With the idea of portal rankings for transfers, my one issue is you can bring in some of the best talent, but what talent did you also lose? K-State didn't suffer any terribly big losses in the portal, and what they done, like you said, they went, found maybe 3 and just found what best plug and fits, like the offensive line, safety. I got a few wide receivers out of the portal to fill that need. K-State wasn't going out looking for a key player. They were just looking for pieces to fit in. And that might be why it's not the most flashy class, especially in the Big 12 compared to Tech, where they had to fill in tons of holes. And they went out and just got as many good names as they could. K-State didn't need to do that. They just needed a few pieces that can plug in and play for them if needed. And it might be a low ranking, but I think that's exactly what K-State wants. I don't think they want to go out and sign a whole new team or a whole new position, like replacing a whole safety core, or that's not what K-State wants to do. If they need to, they'll go find the player, but they're not in need of these crazy transfer portal pickups.
Fitz, I have a question for you. Yeah. This kind of goes with what we're talking about. Off the top of your head, do you have any idea who K-State's highest rated outgoing transfer was from last season?
I've forgotten them all. I wish I was joking.
I know.
I just write them off.
But shouldn't that tell you something? Like they're not worried. I'll tell you the answer.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I think there should be an equation, your outgo versus income.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, did you improve yourself from what you lost to what you gained? I think that's a better measurement. That'd be cool. I'm going to actually suggest that 24/7 that we provide that stat. What was lost, what was gained.
Yep.
The answer is Carver Willis, by the way.
And I love Carver as a person.
Yeah.
But boy, he struggled again last season. And from everything I was told, he was not going to be on the 105 for various reasons.
Right. So. But again, you know what? To wrap this thought up, like, do you feel more confident about the tackle position now than you did at the end of the season last year? For me, with the additions they brought in, it's a resounding yes. But you would have no idea by just looking at the transfer portal rankings that K-State's highest rated transfer portal lever, I don't know if that's a word. Departure was Carver Willis. And they've added like 3 offensive tackles
that are
better. And they fortified that position.
Yeah, they've done a great job. I'm just going to say it. I think this position, offensive line, will be better than last year's offensive line, even with the loss of Hadley Panzer and others. So I'm fired up about this, and we will dig into this question a whole heck of a lot more on the VIP podcast because Powercat Ryan takes us deep into that journey. But I'm going to be really honest here. I absolutely love the way Kansas State football is using the portal. I love the way they're using their money to keep the roster intact. I think too many coaches look at the raw talent of players and say this raw talent's better than that raw talent, forgetting that they've already invested 2 years in this kid. Is the year 3 going to actually pass the other person? You know, sometimes I think the investment is worth keeping on to them, even though at the immediate moment you can upgrade. That makes sense? I think you've got to have kids that are invested in your program, and finding those through the portal is difficult. Cole, they've added 5 offensive linemen through the portal. 1 departed, right? So it's been a remake that we will get into later on the Monday version of this show. Here we go. Let's do this next one. I forgot where we're at. Here we go. How do the football coaches feel about running backs behind Edwards and Jackson, be it Rice and Price? And this is from Wayne Cron 47. Asked before Kansas State added a running back. So that's an important distinction here.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty clear that they did not like where they were at running back in terms of depth. They felt like they really did need to go out and find some more guys. And, when you can get a guy like Antonio Martin that had a really productive freshman year, and now he wants to come into your place and compete. So he was at Southeast Louisiana, transferred to ULM, but just like the offensive lineman we mentioned, got there, didn't like it. I don't know what the problem was, and decided he could do better, and he did. So we'll see. It was clear to me from early on that they wanted one more piece to that, because all the guys you listed, I don't have the roster in front of me. I wonder what the heaviest of those four is.
It would probably be JB Price, but he's not exactly he's not exactly a bruiser. And so you look at what Antonio Martin brings to the table. He's listed as 5'11", 220 pounds. That is the definition of a bruiser. And I think it's important to note, guys, Gabe Irvin, who was brought in from Nebraska, another guy who had injury concerns throughout his career, had to essentially medically retire. So he's no longer around, unfortunate for him. But K-State replaces him. We just talked about the transfer portal rankings. Well, according to 24/7, Gabe Irvin is an 84 transfer ranking and Antonio Martin's an 86. And so
complimentary. Yeah.
Right. Very similar types of running backs. But I think that what you're getting with those three guys, I think those are going to be the guys who see a majority of the carries. I think that if there's going to be a fourth guy, Devon Rice might be kind of a gadget guy. He's essentially Dylan Edwards' backup, a quick, speedy guy who can get the ball in space. But I would anticipate that you would see a heavy dose of those three running backs. And I think they really like Martin. Otherwise, I don't think this was like a major need. But bringing him in just tells me they really like him.
I'm just going to say this. These two are comparable in not really build, because Martin's a little bit squattier and he's a bowling ball.
Mm-hmm.
He's really tough to bring down. But he was just a freshman. So one guy's a senior with a beaten up body and the other guy's going to be a sophomore. Yeah, I'll take the sophomore. This worked out great for K-State. This was a great way to end the portal class, which, barring a surprise, this is the end of the portal class. Ethan, your thoughts about running back?
No, I agree. I've always liked the idea. You have the one guy in like Dylan Edwards who get him out into the flat or just anywhere in space and he'll beat everyone. Then you have that one guy that if you need a yard or two guaranteed, you hand it to him and just right between the guard and tackle. Looking at Martin, I mean, people are going to bat an eye and look at Southeast Louisiana and think that's not Nebraska, but he averaged over 5 yards a carry last year for them, which is very impressive. Yeah, it's a small school, but I mean, it's proven he has the yards, the carries. I mean, it's a great pickup. And like you said, he's only a freshman last year. So, I mean, even if he doesn't maybe get as many carries this year, maybe it's a guy for the future that we see more of 2 years down the line.
And something to note with Martin, guys, and I don't know how many people realize this, but he was he according to some recruiting services, a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, signed with Georgia Tech, and ultimately didn't play it down there. He went to go play at Blinn Junior College down there in Texas. He's from Atlanta, so he decided to stay in state, had some SEC offers, ultimately ends up at Blinn for his first year, and then transfers to Southeast Louisiana last year. And so, we're assuming that year of junior college isn't going to count. And so you're looking at it, and he does. He's got 3 years to play. And so, I think this is a really, really high profile get. And he's just 2 years removed from being, a very coveted high school prospect. So this is not a Southeast Louisiana transfer you're just taking a flyer on. I'd be curious to know why the departure from Louisiana Monroe. I'm sure that we'll have some time to dig into that. But honestly, at this point, if you're him and you're going to have some opportunities, why not into the transfer portal and try and play at a higher level? Yep. So, I really like the fit.
And as I said, it was really needed. K-State's running game probably will be working the edges quite a bit. Look, Dylan Edwards is effective between the tackles. So is Joe Jackson. But on a 3rd and 1, when the box is loaded up, they're not going to run over anyone. Mm-hmm. And this gives them a guy that can lower his center of gravity, put a shoulder down, and hit you with 220 pounds in a low center of gravity.
Yep.
So this gives you an advantage. I don't think this will ever be a big yardage gainer for K-State. I don't see the kind of speed you need in the Big 12 overall. Maybe I got him totally wrong. There's not a whole lot of highlights from Southeast Louisiana out there to scout him with. So I think there's a lot of promise here. I love the idea of having another young back in the mix, because depending on what goes on this season with Dylan Edwards, we're going to have him back, and you're going to see him back on the field. All these guys will be back, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that alleviates some pressure maybe with future recruiting, or maybe you do add one more young guy in there and just try to treat it like quarterback, where you're going to bring one in and maybe go hit the portal when you need to in other years. So I don't know, man. I feel really good about the running back room. I just got to be really blunt. There was two areas on offense that I was very concerned about. One was exactly what we just discussed, third down back.
Yep.
And this cat can catch the ball too.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not a one-trick pony. He can get out on the edge, and he's got good hands. And also that offensive line depth, and honestly, the right tackle spot. So it's been a big ongoing concern with the coaches. I'm glad they mentioned Pastore at the press conference, because it wasn't my information to share. I didn't feel particularly good, but he's fighting it. Hopefully he will return. But he's got a little uphill battle with his injury from everything I'm told. So they needed to bolster that tackle spot. They needed some more depth. I won't be shocked if both these guys come in and start and displace someone we have penciled in right now, because I think both those guys on the offensive line are that good. Here we go. Let me get the right one. There we go. What will it take for K-State and the rest of the Big 12, for that matter, to get dominant type defensive lineman Fitz mentioned in one of his daily deliveries? Money. I mean, I don't know if there's any more complex answer than you have to estimate, looking at your locker room, what it'll do if you go literally buy a talent. Something we just discussed. K-State's not doing that, Cole. They're not going to do that. They're not going to say, hey, we're just going to buy the best player. This spot might be different. I mean, I would think there's some 4-star guys out there going to SEC schools that could come in and play immediately in the Big 12. And that's an admission that there's lesser talent in the Big 12, particularly at this spot. Like I said in my daily delivery, this is the position on the field the Big 12 and ACC can't consistently match up with. All the best defensive tackles, most of the best defense are coming out of Southeastern high schools. It's just the demographics of the country overlaps a certain conference. Those kids get to stay home, and you can get a 6'5" guy that weighs 325 pounds and runs a 4.7 or something. Just a beast, a rare type of guy. They cost money, but the step down from that, maybe the Big 12 can get into that with, NIL offerings. Maybe, I don't know. You got to get creative, but you also don't want to blow up your locker room with getting money out of whack.
It's like pitching in baseball. In Major League Baseball, it's the currency of baseball is pitching. Well, look at the NFL, guys. The defensive line, the defensive tackle specifically, is the currency of the NFL. If you have a defensive tackle, your defense is so much more dominant. It's a major reason why the Chiefs have had this turnaround on defense over the last 10 years is because of Chris Jones, single-handedly because of Chris Jones. And that's really what we're talking about. Now, I don't think K-State's ever going to have an opportunity to land a Chris Jones out of high school, but there are guys who are very similar to the type of player that he is that enter the transfer portal every year. And I think if K-State were to land one of them, that would have to be it. You would have to feel really confident about your team, about all aspects of your team, and just say, hey, we want this guy, and go all in for that. That would be like the only way. I just don't know if there's a realistic path to recruiting these kinds of kids out of high school. You can match up at defensive end. You can match up at corner. You can match up at safety and linebacker on the defensive side of the football, and in the trenches on the other side for the offensive line. But it's really, really hard for schools in the Big 12. And Fitz, I'll just say, non-schools of the SEC, even Missouri, in this instance to go down and recruit. We're really talking about nose tackles and defensive tackles because those are the currency of football right now.
Yeah, like you said, it's a rare piece to find a person that size with that athleticism to play at that position. It's a rare commodity. With that, I mean, the portal is going to be your best luck because getting him out of high school is going to be tough. If not, you got to look towards the development. Maybe you take a risk on a guy who has the size and maybe has some mobility that isn't sought after as much because maybe he's not as fast, and go the development path, which K-State's done great with. K-State's great at developing players, but it's just going to be hard to compete when there's so few athletes of that build and that athleticism. You're not going to beat out the Alabamas, the Georgias for players out of high school. The best bet you're going to get is going to get in the portal or find a player to develop. It's going to be hard to compete with any of those big Southern schools for the players that are mostly, like you said, out of the South region of the United States, where they'd rather stay at home than come to Kansas. It's just how it's going to be. But development portal is probably going to be the best way to get there.
And guys, that for more context here, I'm looking at the top defensive line recruits of the 2025 class, so the class that will be freshmen this upcoming season. And top 10 defensive linemen, there are only 2 prospects who are either not in Texas or the southeastern part of the United States. And that would be one from Edwardsville, Illinois, which is St. Louis, and then the other one is from New Jersey. So 8 of the top 10 are from either Texas or the southeastern part of the country.
So with the exception of the Texas kids, everyone's east of the Mississippi.
Correct.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
That's just enormous disadvantage. Where's Chris Jones originally from? Do you know?
I believe he's from Mississippi.
So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you can look at this. He's a perfect example for 2 points. One, if you watch the Chiefs play, when Chris Jones is on the field and motivated, that whole defense is so much better. And even when he's on the field and kind of going through the motions, they have to pay so much attention to him. It frees those rush ends up. So you're just better having him. But he went to Mississippi State, which is not any powerhouse by any means in the SEC anymore, or really when he was there. They were good. They were better. But wouldn't it be nice if a guy like Chris Jones was playing in Topeka?
Yeah.
You know, and you could just go say, why don't you stay at home? And he does. I think that's really what it's going to take, guys. If this state would get through this incredible tight end phase, where this came from. I mean, this run of tight ends out of Kansas is baffling. And maybe it's something, Cole, you're in Kansas high school football. Maybe there's something going on in high school football and using tight ends has grown dramatically from what I remember. But my God, this state has produced some tight ends that they're putting into just really high level programs. So if we could stop that, I'm just going to ask, you're a coach, Cole, let's take care of this and turn that into defensive tackles. So basically what I'm saying is, Goodland, you should have fed Lincoln Cure a lot more.
Yep.
And made him a 6'5", 310-pound guy. But I think he's going to do fine either way.
Did you know Chris Jones was the number 2 player in the country in the class of 20?
I knew he was high, but dang.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good rating by the services right there.
That's 100. He had a 100. 100.
Who's ranked ahead of him?
Let's look. In the class of 2013, that would be Robert Nick Dimjay.
Oh, I remember him well.
Yeah. That's a really good class, though, actually. But yeah, so Chris Jones. And then
so the analyst had a whiff and a home run.
Yep.
Correct.
That's kind of the way it goes. Cole, give us a baseball update. Do we have anything more? You got score there?
Let's see. Let's see if it updates. It is currently 11-3 K-State, top of the 6th.
So we're feeling good about this one.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah, K-State really needed it. I put on our message boards that I don't know if the series against BYU is necessarily a must win, but after they lost to Nebraska, it kind of felt like it. They're still going to be projected to be in the field, I would imagine, but they're going to be right on that line. And they come home. I believe they play West Virginia this weekend, this upcoming weekend, or Cincinnati.
No, you're right. It's West Virginia this next week, and then at Cincy.
And then at Cincinnati. So 6 really important games that you feel like K-State needs to find a way to go 4-2 at least in. So we'll see what happens. I like their chances. This team has been notorious for slumping in April, and as soon as it turns to May, turning it on. And it seems like that is going to happen once again.
West Virginia's pretty good, aren't they?
They're very good.
Yeah.
4 or 5 losses on the season, so it's going to be tough.
That's a big series.
Yep.
Big series. Okay, boys, we're going to move into VIP session. As I said, this podcast goes up on Sunday, but on Monday at GoPowercat.com, we'll throw up the VIP version of it. And it's a great question. We're not going to unveil it here because it's kind of gives away everything, but it's more about that offensive line recruiting and the coaching and why they went to the portal and all that stuff. And we're going to dig in deep for our subscribers at GoPowercat.com. We appreciate you watching the show. We'll be back next week with at least one podcast, if not 2. Talk to you later.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.